My name is Avery Monroe. I'm 28 years old, and my family tried to steal $22.5 million from me on the day we buried my grandmother. While mom filmed her fake tears for Instagram and dad refreshed stock charts between hymns, the attorney pressed play on her video will. My name echoed through that cold church, and their smiles died in real time. That night, mom demanded I hand it all over. I refused. Her slap burned, but she never realized I'd been planning for this moment my entire life. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by your own family. Because this isn't just a story about money. It's about manipulation, silence, and the moment I finally stopped being the family's scapegoat. What happened next changed everything. I didn't become cold overnight. It started in a warm kitchen that smelled like burnt toast and lemon cleaner. I was 9, holding a blue ribbon from the state science fair, a model of renewable energy I'd built out of soda cans and wires. I still remember the sting of glue on my fingers, the thrill of hearing my name over the intercom at school. Avery Monroe, first place in engineering design. When I came home, I expected fireworks. Or at least a hug. Mom was in the kitchen, arranging tulips for one of her perfect family photo shoots. Dad was on the couch, the glow of stock charts flickering across his glasses. My ribbon crinkled in my pocket. Mom, I won, I said. She didn't even look up. That's nice, honey. But can you move for a second? The light's better by the window. Sloane, my little sister, tottered in holding a sketchbook. Mom, look, she chirped, holding up a drawing of a cat with a crooked smile. Mom gasped like she'd witnessed a miracle. Oh, baby, that's real talent. She knelt, kissed Sloane's forehead, and turned the page toward her phone. Smile, sweetheart. Let's show the world my little artist. I stood there, holding my ribbon, feeling smaller by the second. Dad mumbled, "Good job, kid," without glancing up. The ribbon went into a drawer before dinner. No one mentioned it again. It sounds small, but that's how neglect works. It carves you with invisible blades. At 12, I built a homework tracker app on our shared laptop. I stayed up for nights, surrounded by candy wrappers and half-drunk cans of soda, adding features, color-coding lines of code. The night before the school fair, the file was gone. Deleted. Sloane smirked from across the room, spinning her new phone in her hand. Oops, she said. Guess it glitched. I rebuilt everything overnight, eyes burning, hands shaking. I still placed second. But Mom never showed up. She was too busy walking Sloane down the art exhibit hallway, holding her by the shoulders like she was guiding a star. That was the night I started my first journal, a cheap, spiral-bound notebook hidden behind my desk. I wrote everything, every slight, every bruise on my self-worth. It became my silent courtroom. By 15, I stopped expecting anyone to clap. I spent afternoons at the library instead, the only place where the computers hummed louder than my thoughts. I learned to code, not because I wanted approval, but because numbers didn't lie. Algorithms didn't play favorites. The librarians knew my name, offered me cocoa during blizzards, and let me stay after closing. Sometimes, I'd walk home in the dark, clutching a few crumpled bills from a freelance gig fixing websites, debugging old code. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every dollar was a little rebellion against the empire of favoritism that ruled my house. At home, things got worse. Sloane strutted through the kitchen, showing off her brand new iPad. Mom says I need it for my portfolio, she said, tapping through art apps. Mom smiled. Avery, you should be happy for your sister. You're responsible. You don't need gadgets to prove yourself. That line, "you don't need it," was her mantra. My needs were always optional. Dad, on rare good days, would slip me a $20 bill like a secret. "Don't tell your mom," he'd whisper. It felt like pity wrapped in currency. By high school, I had become background noise in my own family. Teachers called me Sloane's sister, not Avery. Mom organized charity brunches, smiling wide for photos with captions about family legacy. I was the shadow cropped out of every frame. The only time I tried to fight back was at 17. I'd started dating Alex, a boy from coding club. He liked how my mind worked, how I could find patterns in chaos. For a while, I thought I'd finally found someone who saw me. But Sloane couldn't stand it. She told people I used him for homework help, sent fake screenshots around school. "She's arrogant," they whispered. "She talks trash." When I confronted her, my voice shook. Why do you hate me so much? She smiled without blinking. Because you make it too easy. Mom overheard the argument and sided with her immediately. Avery, stop being jealous. Sloan already has enough stress. Don't tear your sister down. That night, something snapped. I realized love in my family was conditional earned by obedience, not existence. So I invented a new name, Nova Quinn. I created an email, a profile, a brand that had nothing to do with Monroe. Nova submitted code to contests, freelanced quietly, collected payments under the radar. For the first time, I was seen not as someone's daughter, but as someone with value. The irony? Mom bragged about her hardworking girls on social media while cashing small mystery checks from a supportive donor, money I'd sent home anonymously to keep the lights on. I didn't know it back then, but every silent deposit was a chain I'd have to break later. By 19, I had savings. By 21, I'd built a real client base. By 23, Nova Quinn's projects were featured in minor tech blogs, all while Mom called Sloan my creative miracle. At 25, I stopped visiting home for holidays. The last time I did, Mom handed me a grocery list instead of a hug. Since you're so good with numbers, she said, could you help Dylan with his taxes? He was already 3 drinks deep, bragging about his startup that just needed one more round. I glanced at his pitch deck half plagiarized from online templates. You need honesty, not funding, I said. He laughed. You think you're better than us? I didn't answer. I just wiped the counter, listening to the house creak like an old ship in a storm. Years passed like that quietly, digitally, invisibly. Every app I shipped under Nova Quinn became another invisible brick in a wall separating me from them. Then came the phone call that would pull me back. It was winter. The harbor wind howled against my apartment window. I just finished debugging a server issue when the phone rang. It was Mom's voice, trembling but practiced. Avery, Grandma's gone. I felt my stomach fold inward. The funeral was scheduled in Portland. Family only, she added, like I was an outsider renting my last name. When I arrived, the harbor air cut through my coat. Candace Monroe, my mother, stood by the church steps, dabbing her eyes for the camera crew from her lifestyle vlog. Sloan posed beside her in black lace, crying in perfect lighting. Dad stood off to the side, muttering about market dips. Dylan checked crypto prices. I clutched Grandma Eleanor's scarf, the only inheritance I thought I'd ever get, and walked inside. The church smelled like salt, old wood, and lilies. When the attorney stepped forward after the service, I expected some polite reading of the will. Instead, he played a video. Grandma's voice filled the air, calm but steady. Some of you loved our money more than our company, she said. The business goes to the one who showed up to work. My name appeared on the screen. Avery Monroe. Silence fell like a thunderclap. Mom's smile froze. Dad's phone slipped from his hand. Dylan laughed a sharp, brittle sound. No way, he said. There's a mistake. Sloan hissed. You manipulated her. The attorney just said, the trust is sealed. I didn't gloat. I didn't even breathe. Grandma's face lingered on the screen, her eyes soft but firm. Stand firm. She'd written once on a note she tucked into my scarf. That night, during the family dinner that was supposed to be reconciliation, Mom demanded I sign power of attorney over, for convenience. I said no. The table went silent. Knives gleamed. Then came the slap. The sound was small but final like the crack of ice before it breaks. I stood, slid a printed ledger across the table, and whispered, consider this your statement. It listed every payment I'd made over the years to cover their debts, bills, and emergencies. $45,000 of invisible devotion. Dad's jaw clenched. Mom's face paled. I left the ledger by her wine glass, took my scarf, and walked out into the freezing air. Behind me, the house buzzed with stunned silence. Ahead, the harbor lights blinked like distant code. I texted 3 words to every account I'd ever covered. Cancel. Effective immediately. What I didn't know then was that by morning, every system I'd quietly built to keep them afloat would shut down, and their world would start to unravel. By sunrise, their messages came pouring in, first confused, then furious. Dad, Avery, the auto payments failed. Fix it. Mom, don't be childish. We're family. Sloan, you're really doing this for attention, huh? Dylan didn't text, he just sent a Venmo request, labeled Repay Love. I didn't respond. I sat by the window of the Harbor House guest room, watching the sea fog swallow the dock. Grandma's scarf hung on the chair beside me, the fabric smelling faintly of cedar and old perfume. I pressed it to my face, let it steady my pulse. The silence of the house was strange. Without their noise, I could finally hear the real sounds. The radiator ticking, gulls crying, waves hitting the shore. It was almost peaceful. Almost. A knock broke that quiet rhythm. Hank Rivera stood in the doorway, stooped, gray, loyal to the bone. "Miss Monroe," he said, voice low. "Mrs. Carraway left something for you. Said it was, only if necessary." He placed a small steel USB drive on the desk. Handwriting scratched across masking tape, "Only if necessary." I turned it over in my palm. It was heavier than it looked. "Necessary? For what?" I asked. Hank met my eyes. "For protecting yourself. And her legacy." After he left, I sat there for a long time. The USB glinting in morning light. I wanted to plug it in immediately, but part of me was afraid. What if it proved what they'd always said? That I was cold, calculating, dangerous. I slid it into my laptop anyway. The files loaded slow, like ghosts forming shapes. PDFs, recordings, transaction logs. Each folder carried dates and signatures. My father's, my mother's, even Dylan's. Transfers that didn't match. Double wires, unreturned loans, forged initials. It wasn't just financial mess. It was a map of deceit. There was even an audio file. I hesitated before hitting play. Grandma's voice came through softer, weaker than I remembered. "If you're hearing this, Avery, it means things went wrong. I trusted your logic, your steadiness. Don't let them make you doubt that. Protect what you've built. Don't let guilt disguise itself as love." I didn't cry. I just nodded, whispering, "I won't." When I looked up, the harbor outside had turned gold with sunrise. For the first time, I realized the tide was on my side. That afternoon, I met with Reed Kaplan, the family attorney Grandma had trusted for decades. His office smelled like paper and rain. He adjusted his glasses and spoke without preamble. "They're preparing a public challenge. Your mother called the trust fraudulent in her first email this morning." "Already?" I asked. "She moves fast when the cameras are rolling," he said. "But we move smarter. Do you have the USB?" I handed it over. Kaplan plugged it in, scanned a few files, and raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. These logs show Mr. Monroe's loan requests with falsified collateral signatures. That's criminal exposure if we push it." "And the recordings?" He smiled thinly. "Those might save you more than money. We spent hours mapping everything out. Who had motive, who had access, who could leak what." He suggested we bring in a forensic consultant for the tech trail. That's when I called Clara Whitman, a cybersecurity specialist I'd met through a contract job. She owed me a favor, or maybe just respected my quiet competence. "Family drama?" she asked over the phone. "Those are the worst kind of hacks. Can you trace fake videos?" I asked. She whistled softly. "Deepfakes? Depends on quality. Send me samples." I did. The one where Grandma's face flickered on screen accusing me of coercion. The one where my voice had been spliced into a confession I never made. Clara called back 30 minutes later. "They're sloppy. Two different origins. One from a college art lab in Providence. Another from a startup IP in Brooklyn." My stomach twisted. "Dylan and Sloan." "Seems so," she said. "Do you want proof printable in court?" "Yes." "Then don't talk to them," she warned. "They'll bait you into emotion. Keep it digital. Keep it cold." That advice became my mantra. Days blurred into strategy. Kaplan coordinated legal filings. Clara secured data trails. Hank quietly collected physical evidence from the house. Missing silverware, old ledgers, receipts. Ruth Bennett, the housekeeper, had been saving for years. Meanwhile, Mom's online performance escalated. Her Instagram feed transformed into a parade of self-pity. Candlelit selfies. Captions like "Healing from betrayal takes courage." She even started selling sponsored grief candles. In one reel, she held Grandma's framed photo and said, "Some inherit money, others inherit pain. If you wanted this for you." And the comments section was a battlefield, half sympathy, half skepticism. I watched it all without reacting. Not a single comment, not a single word. Silence was its own weapon. But they didn't stop there. Dad tried to reach out through his lawyer. If you drop the claim, the message read, "We'll agree to a family settlement." Translation: give us control, and we'll stop slandering you. I sent back 2 words: no settlement. That night, the harbor house lost power. It wasn't a storm, just a blown fuse, probably. Still, the darkness pressed heavy. I lit a candle and stared out at the sea. That's when I realized how long I'd been waiting for them to change. For an apology that would never come. I wasn't just protecting Grandma's trust. I was reclaiming my own. The next morning, the smear campaign spread wider. An anonymous insider emailed my old college dean, claiming I'd plagiarized code. A fake LinkedIn article accused me of fraudulent tech practices. My inbox flooded with hate mail from strangers. Clara traced the upload route again, this time through a VPN, then straight to Dylan's company server. "He's using the startup as cover," she said. "If we move fast, we can prove intent." "Do it," I said, "and make sure it's airtight." By Friday, Kaplan's office smelled of burnt coffee and printer ink. He slid a new folder toward me. "It's time," he said. "We'll file for a protective order, freeze their access, and prepare for a full public defense." I nodded, though my chest ached. There was no joy in winning against blood. That evening, Ruth appeared at the door with a small stack of yellowed papers. "Your grandmother kept everything," she said, "even the things she couldn't fix." Inside were blueprints for the harbor business, notes about profit-sharing plans, and a final line in Grandma's shaky handwriting. "One day, Avery will bring balance." I felt something unclench inside me. For years, I'd believed being quiet made me weak. Now I understood it had made me precise. Later that night, I drove into town. Snow drifted across the roads, the diner windows glowing soft and amber. Inside, I met Aunt Porter, Grandma's old business partner. She looked me over like she was measuring my resolve. "Your grandmother believed in the numbers," she said, stirring her coffee. "But she also believed in timing. Are you ready to show them both?" "I am," I said. She smiled faintly. "Then I'll back you. The harbor's yours now. Just don't make the mistake she did, trusting family over evidence." Outside, the snow had turned to rain, tapping against my coat like Morse code. When I got back to the house, I packed Grandma's scarf into my bag. I knew I wouldn't sleep much in the coming weeks. Between court filings, statements, and Clara's forensic reports, the air buzzed with invisible electricity. But beneath it all, I felt something new. Not revenge exactly, clarity. They thought the inheritance was the weapon. They were wrong. The weapon was the truth, and I had just learned how to aim. When the first headline hit, I almost didn't recognize my own name. "Estranged daughter, accused of manipulating elderly heiress." The photo they used was cropped from years ago me at a charity dinner. Blinking mid-sentence, eyes red from exhaustion. Candace had posted it first. Then gossip sites picked it up like sharks smelling blood. The comment sections were brutal. "Another greedy millennial. She looks cold. She doesn't even seem like family." Mom's caption was simple: "Some wounds cut deeper than blood." I stared at the screen until my coffee went cold. The words weren't just lies, they were strategy. She was framing the narrative before the truth even left my lips. Reed Kaplan called before noon. "Don't answer anything online," he said. "Not one word. We'll fight this in silence." But silence has its own sound. The slow grind of your reputation being dismantled click by click. By that evening, Sloane uploaded her own reel. Piano music, soft lighting, and crocodile tears. "She's my sister," she said, voice trembling. But fame changes people. The comments poured in. Heart emojis, sympathy, outrage. I felt my pulse spike. I opened my laptop, about to post proof. Kaplan's voice echoed in my head. "Don't feed it." Instead, I opened the USB again and built folders. Evidence. Timestamped. Cross-checked. Ready for court. If they wanted drama, I'd give them data. That night, Clara texted. "The deepfake is live again. Different account, same source." She sent a screenshot of the IP address trail. The chain zigzagged through proxies until it stopped at a small Brooklyn tech office, Dylan's startup. My hands went cold. "He's risking his company for this? He thinks no one will notice," she replied. "He's wrong." The next morning, Kaplan arranged a private meeting downtown. The office smelled like burnt paper and rain again. He set the USB beside a stack of legal folders. "They've crossed from defamation into fraud." he said. We can petition for emergency relief if we show clear malicious intent. What about proof of creation? Clara opened her laptop. Metadata, she said, scrolling fast. Same video editor tag used on both the funeral footage and the fake. Guess who owns the license? Dylan, I whispered. Bingo. I didn't smile. It didn't feel like victory, it felt like confirmation of everything I'd feared. By midweek, another storm hit. Dad had contacted two of the harbor's suppliers, claiming family restructuring was underway and that payments would soon be redirected. And Porter called me immediately. I told him no, she said, but he's fishing for leverage. That night, Kaplan filed a notice with the court to freeze external transfers until the trust could be reviewed. Ed Monroe received the order within 24 hours. His reply was one line. You think you can outsmart me? The next day, a thick envelope arrived at Harbor House, handwritten return address, Candace Monroe. Inside, no words, just a stack of printed screenshots. Me, as a child, smiling beside Sloane, cropped so tightly my face looked like a ghost. A sticky note on top read, remember who you owe. I sat on the floor and laughed, not joy, not even anger, just disbelief. My mother had weaponized nostalgia. Later that night, the phone rang. Dylan this time. Come on, Avery. Don't make this ugly. It already is. You can't keep pretending you're the victim. You built fake evidence, Dylan. A pause. Then a laugh. Yeah? Prove it. I hung up. The next morning, Clara had already built the proof. She sent over a complete digital trail, server logs, edit timestamps, even screen capture of Dylan's account logged in at 2:14 a.m. with the export command. Kaplan whistled softly when he saw it. That's airtight. Still, the family didn't back down. Mom doubled down online, filming a tearful video beside Grandma's portrait. She forged our mother's last wishes, she sobbed. Mascara perfect, lighting cinematic. All I want is the truth. The irony nearly choked me. But the truth, like code, doesn't need permission to run. It just executes. We moved forward quietly. Kaplan prepared affidavits. Clara handled the forensic verification, and Hank retrieved more documents from the safe deposit box. Each discovery painted the same picture. Every family member had taken something from heirlooms to hidden withdrawals, but they'd chosen to accuse the only one who hadn't. One night, Ruth Bennett came to my office carrying a folded receipt. Found this under Mrs. Monroe's desk, she said. Looks like a real estate agent's card. I flipped it over. A note in Mom's handwriting. Measure every room before the deal. Deal? I asked. She planned to sell the house, Ruth said, before the will was even read. I felt my stomach drop. Harbor House wasn't just property. It was the last piece of my grandmother's life. The place where she taught me logic problems over tea, where she whispered, "You don't need their approval to exist." I sat back, the receipt trembling in my hand. They weren't just greedy. They were erasing her. That night, I drove to the edge of the dock. The water below was black glass. For a moment, I wanted to throw my phone and let all of it sink. But then I remembered Grandma's note. Stand firm. So I didn't throw it. I used it. I called Kaplan. File everything. All of it. When I hung up, the wind howled so hard it carried my words away. The next 48 hours moved like a court drama I hadn't auditioned for. Kaplan filed the injunction at dawn. By noon, Mom's team posted another heartbreak video. By dusk, local news stations were calling the Harbor House a family feud mansion. When the reporter knocked on my gate, I didn't answer. Instead, I watched from the upstairs window as he rehearsed his stand-up take. The heiress accused of betrayal remained silent. Good. Let them think silence is guilt. It always makes the truth louder when it lands. Inside, the printer hummed. Clara's files were coming through: logs, invoices, server trails, every byte stamped with date and origin. She'd included a cover page that said simply, "Digital fingerprints don't lie." That night, Kaplan organized a meeting at his office. The table was littered with coffee cups and highlighters. And Porter joined us, her gray hair tied tight, eyes sharp. Hank sat near the door, arms folded like a sentry. Kaplan spread the folders open. Here's our timeline, he said. Financial abuse, digital defamation, breach of fiduciary duty. Each alone is ugly. Together they're catastrophic. And looked at me. Are you ready for this going public? I thought of Grandma's scarf, folded in my bag. It's already public, I said. I'm just reclaiming the headline. The next morning, the escalation turned physical. Nancy Howell, our neighbor, came by holding her phone. You should see this, she said. The screen showed footage from her security cam. Mom leaving the funeral reception, pocketing the silver teapot from the display table. Nancy's voice shook. I didn't want to believe it, but she did. I felt my throat tighten. Thank you for saving this. Your grandmother was good to me, she said. It's time someone was good to her memory. Hours later, the clip went to Kaplan. He said nothing, just scribbled Exhibit B in red ink. But the biggest blow came from Clara that evening. She traced the deepfakes original render file stored not only on Dylan's server, but synced automatically to Sloan's university cloud. The final nail. She messaged me. Got it. Metadata plus account log. This is textbook conspiracy. For the first time in months, I exhaled. They did it together, I said aloud. Of course they did, Clara replied. Toxic people never attack alone. By Friday, the storm had grown nationwide. Hashtags, reaction videos, even think pieces about modern greed and inheritance wars. Mom loved it. Her follower count jumped by 30,000. She posted a photo with a Bible and the caption, Faith, not fortune. Dylan went live, spinning a story about miscommunication. Sloan reposted him with heart emojis. Their desperation was almost poetic. That night, Ed broke the first court order. He contacted one of N's suppliers, trying to cut a private deal behind my back. The supplier, smart, loyal, forwarded the message to Kaplan, who filed a violation motion before sunrise. The penalty, $15,000 in fines and a written reprimand. Dad called me an hour later. His voice was low, almost calm. You're ruining us. I didn't flinch. You ruined yourselves. You think you're some kind of hero? No, I said quietly. I think I'm the audit. He hung up. Later that evening, I met Ruth in the kitchen. She'd stayed on as housekeeper through every storm, quietly collecting details the rest ignored. I found this, she said, handing me a wrinkled note in my mother's handwriting. It read, Meeting with Tom Wheeler. Chamber discuss speech. Legacy angle. Bring Sloan for optics. My pulse quickened. When? Tomorrow, she said. Noon. I realized what Candace was planning. The Monroe Legacy Luncheon wasn't just an event. It was her final act, her public rewrite of history. She would stand on a stage, paint herself as the victim, and steal back the narrative in front of Portland's business elite. I stared at the note, my reflection flickering in the kettle's steel. The decision formed as fast as code compiling. She wants a performance, I said. I'll give her one. Kaplan agreed instantly. Perfect venue. Public. Documented. Neutral press. Clara started prepping visual proofs, metadata slides, signature comparisons, and the audio file Hank had recovered from the funeral day. The one where Candace and Dylan whispered about moving the assets before she notices. Hank handed me the drive. Play it only when the lights are brightest, he said. I nodded. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, each creak of the floorboards carrying old ghosts. The portrait of Grandma hung by the staircase, her eyes steady even in moonlight. I whispered, You told me to stand firm. Tomorrow, I will. The dawn came icy and blue. Seagulls screamed above the harbor like an omen. I ironed my coat, tied Grandma's scarf, and looked at myself in the mirror. The girl who once begged to be seen was gone. What stood there now was someone else, sharp, silent, and ready to end the performance her mother had been directing her whole life. Outside, the car waited. Inside the briefcase lay every truth they'd buried. They had called me cold, calculating, ruthless. They were about to find out they were right. The Portland Chamber of Commerce luncheon was held at the Edgewater Pavilion, glass walls overlooking the harbor, sunlight splintering across the water like polished knives. Inside, tables glittered with silver cutlery, name tags, and linen napkins folded into perfect triangles. Cameras were already set up at the back, waiting for the show. Mom thrived under this kind of light. Candace Monroe didn't walk. She arrived, dressed in cream silk and practiced sorrow. She moved from handshake to handshake like royalty in exile. Dylan followed, phone in hand, streaming clips to his followers. Sloan trailed behind, head down, trembling just enough to look fragile on camera. When I entered, conversations faltered. The air shifted polite curiosity, laced with tension. Candace spotted me instantly. Her lips curved into a brittle smile. "Avery," she said, microphone already in hand. "So brave of you to come." "Wouldn't miss it," I said evenly. Gordon Price, the chamber director, tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Today we honor legacy, family, and contribution." I almost laughed at the irony. Candace stepped up to the podium, fingers grazing the microphone like she was playing piano. "Thank you, Gordon," she began, voice trembling just enough to sound genuine. "This year has been difficult. My mother's passing left an emptiness only love can fill. But some people—" She paused, her eyes sliding toward me, confuse inheritance with affection. A sympathetic murmur rippled through the crowd. She continued, tears catching the light. "I only ask for fairness, for the truth. Families should heal, not fracture." Every word was a scalpel, designed to slice while looking holy. She gestured to Sloane, who dabbed at her eyes. "My children have suffered enough. I pray we find peace." Applause. Camera flashes. I rose slowly. The scrape of my chair against the marble floor was louder than applause. "Peace starts with truth," I said. My voice carried easily calm, measured, practiced. Candace's smile froze. "Avery, perhaps this isn't—" Gordon lifted a hand. "She has the right to respond, Candace." The room went quiet. I stepped toward the podium, scarf loose around my neck. My grandmother, Eleanor Caraway, built her life on hard numbers and harder honesty. She left behind a will, a trust, and a codicil, all verified by this chamber. I lifted a folder. "I have them here, certified and notarized." Reed Kaplan stood, carrying the official seal. "These documents are valid and active. The inheritance is undisputed under Maine law." Candace tried to laugh. "Paper can be faked." "True," I said, "but not data." Clara dimmed the lights and connected her laptop to the projector. The first slide appeared: metadata logs. "This," Clara said from the back, "is the creation trail of the deepfake video that claimed Avery coerced her grandmother. 2 separate origins. Same user license. Same timestamp editor tag." The room murmured. She clicked again. 2 screens appeared, one showing Dylan's startup server dashboard, the other, Sloane's university lab login. Both were used to render and distribute the video. Identical hash signatures. Dylan's chair screeched backward. That's not." Sloane whispered. "You promised it wouldn't trace." Then froze, realizing the mic caught every word. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. "Let's continue," Clara said. "Next slide. Email transfers, wire duplicates, and a contract bearing Ed Monroe's forged signature. This document shows Mr. Monroe applied for a private loan using Eleanor Caraway's estate as collateral after her death. Same signature, same looped pen stroke, a copy-paste from an earlier form." Someone in the crowd gasped. Gordon turned to Candace. "Is that true?" Candace's face tightened. "We were confused about the paperwork." "Confused?" I said softly. "Then why did you meet with a real estate agent 2 weeks before the will was read?" Ruth's voice came from the back, steady as a sermon. "She asked me to measure the rooms for listings." Laughter rippled through the audience. Not cruel, just sharp. Candace's mask began to crack. But the finale wasn't data. It was sound. Hank stepped forward and placed a small speaker on the table. This was recorded the afternoon of the funeral. A faint static filled the room. Then voices. "Dylan, she won't notice. We'll move the accounts before the paperwork clears." "Candace, just smile for the cameras tomorrow. The world believes tears faster than numbers." The clip ended. The silence that followed was electric. Gordon cleared his throat. "Mrs. Monroe, is this your voice?" Candace opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted toward the cameras, searching for sympathy that wasn't there anymore. And Porter rose from her table, voice clear. "The chamber recognizes the Caraway trust as valid. And given this evidence, we're enforcing the codicil clause regarding defamation." Kaplan handed her the printed clause. Gordon read aloud, each word like a gavel strike. "Any public act of defamation against the executor voids all rights to heirlooms and property benefits of the Monroe family." A reporter at the back whispered. "They just lost everything." Candace swayed slightly, gripping the podium. "You can't do this." "It's already done," I said. Sloane's mascara streaked down her cheeks. Dylan's phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the marble. Dad stared at the floor, jaw locked. Then applause slow, hesitant, then swelling like surf against rock. I didn't bask in it. I just looked at Grandma's name embossed on the certificate, feeling the weight of every quiet moment she'd spent trusting me to be steady. Reporters shouted questions. Will you forgive them? What's next for the Monroe legacy? But I was already walking out. As I passed Mom, she reached out, fingertips grazing my sleeve. Avery, please. This can't be the end. I looked at her hand perfectly manicured, trembling just enough for the cameras and said, It's not the end, Mom. It's the audit. Outside, the cold hit like truth. The harbor wind whipped my hair, snapping the scarf around my neck. In the glass wall's reflection, I saw the three of them standing together smaller now, framed by a world they could no longer manipulate. I didn't feel victorious, just clean. The sunlight hit the water, blinding and endless. And for the first time in years, I didn't flinch. By dusk, the chamber building emptied, leaving only echoes of applause and the rustle of papers being packed away. Outside, the sky bled into a bruised gray, and the harbor wind tasted like salt and endings. I didn't drive straight home. I walked the long way down the pier. Grandma used to visit every Sunday, when she said salt air cleared the lies out of people. My phone buzzed nonstop behind me. News alerts, voicemails, missed calls. I didn't check a single one. When I finally reached Harbor House, the lights were still off. The way I'd left them, it felt cleaner that way, stripped of noise, stripped of pretense. Ruth waited inside, her hands folded, her eyes bright with quiet pride. It's over, she whispered. Almost, I said. On the dining table sat Grandma's old scarf, her handwriting still faint on the corner. Stand firm. I ran my fingers across it, the fabric rough from years of use. She would have liked today, I murmured. Ruth smiled. She'd say you did it without raising your voice. The next morning, Kaplan called. The orders are signed, he said. Protective custody of assets. Cease and desist on contact, and fines if they try to reach out. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Thank you. Then the fallout began. Candace's sponsors dropped her within days. One brand issued a polite statement about values no longer aligning. Her reels, once filled with curated sorrow, vanished one by one. Dylan's investors pulled funding, his startup website replaced by a 404-page. Sloan's art school announced an academic integrity review. Silence, finally, became contagious. But revenge wasn't the silence. It was the rebuild. And Porter and I met at the docks a week later. We restructured the harbor company into a profit-sharing system, the kind Grandma had drafted years ago but never got to implement. When the first checks went out, I watched the crew open envelopes with trembling hands. Tears, laughter, disbelief. It felt right. That night, I opened the USB one last time. A folder blinked I hadn't seen before. Inside was a scanned letter. Wire confirmation Nova Quinn Education Grant. Funded by anonymous donor E.C. 3 years ago, Grandma had secretly invested in my alias. She'd known exactly who Nova Quinn was, and she believed in her. I leaned back in my chair, letting the harbor lights spill through the window. They thought I'd destroyed them. But all I'd really done was finish the work. Grandma started clearing the books and reclaiming the truth. And as for forgiveness, that would come later maybe. But access? Never again. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, you know the quiet kind of pain that never makes it into the photos. So tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to build peace on your own terms. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal or money. It's about boundaries, truth, and the strength to finally say no without apology. My name is Avery Monroe, and this story isn't over.